All right. One,
Yeah,
two, three. Okay. All
you,
right. Is that
you
better?
sound yeah, you sound good. I wanna welcome everybody to our latest installment of Quarantine, and today we have a very, very, very special guest, a man who's near and dear to my heart, the one and only Clark Kellogg. Clark, thanks for joining us. How are you doing? How's your family doing amidst this COVID-19 crisis?
Hey, Sean. Great to see you, man. Good to connect. We're all doing well. Everybody's in good health. We're safe. We're following the COVID-19 protocol here in Central Ohio. Pretty much staying close to home. Only heading out when it's necessary, and then practicing all of the basic things that everybody can do. Stay home. Wash your hands. Practice physical and social distancing when you do go out, and trust that we'll navigate through it. But we're doing fine, man. Thank you. We're doing quite well. Good health and sound spirit and body as well.
I'm glad to hear that. And while we're talking about COVID-19, you want to share with our viewers anything that you're aware of that CBS is doing amidst this crisis?
Yeah, I just got word of some fundraising efforts around trying to help people get fed. Obviously, the demand for food for those that have lost jobs or in other trying circumstances as a result of the virus, uh, those food lines and those requests for help in just the basic needs, starting with food, is something that CBS is doing through actually our broadcasters. A couple of our broadcasters are going to offer a neat experience once football starts again, and looking to raise money to support a couple of organizations that are providing food to those in need.
Excellent. Do you have a website you want to share with everybody?
I do not for that specific. I actually just kind of tweeted what the opportunity and experience is, but I imagine you could track down any information at cbssports.com.
Okay, cbssports.com. So our time is limited. I want to jump right into this, Clark. I read where the pillars, if you will, of your life are faith, family, community, and basketball. And of course, I noticed the order in which you
Yeah.
had them in. And so, a lot of people don't know you like I know you. I know that God comes first in your life, that you were a man of God. And I want to give you an opportunity to share what your faith in God has done for you up to this point in your life. But more specifically, where did that faith journey, where did that faith walk begin for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, Sean. I've been a Christian, a Christ follower since November of 1986. So
Amen.
we're coming up on 34 years of me having given my heart and life to God through faith in Christ, through a number of circumstances that unfolded in my life. Basketball has always been central and singular for me. It actually was on the throne of my life growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then matriculating to Ohio State back in the late 70s and on to the Indiana Pacers in the early 80s. But it wasn't until my career was moving towards an end that I didn't anticipate that I actually became a little more intrigued by what faith looked like in terms of what the Bible has to say about how one should live, why God created us, what's our major purpose. And it was back in the winter of 85, spring of 86, that I was coming off my second knee surgery. At the time, figured I'd be coming back healthy and strong and able to play NBA basketball again. But ultimately, my knee injuries led to my retirement in August of 87. But in that period between three knee surgeries and then ultimately retiring, a local minister unfolded the word of God to me at a local chapel service back in the latter part of 1986, the last half of 1986. And really, it was a matter of the living word of God, convicting my heart of a need for a Savior, a need to be connected to the God who gives life and breath, who created me to represent his image in the earth. Sin, living apart from God's design for man, separated me from him. But God, through his love for his creation, provided a way for those who would receive his son, Jesus Christ, who died for man's sinful nature and lived perfectly as a man. If you come to him by faith, acknowledging him as God's son, as the way to right standing and right relationship with God, you can be made new, reborn, born again, made new, rightly related to God. So that's an abridged version. So that was back again in November of '86 when I ultimately yielded my heart and life to Christ. And since then, that's really been the throne of my life, Christ and who he is and what the word says. And it's not necessarily something that's helped me. It's actually become my life. And that's the difference. It's not a compartment of my life. It's not a part of my life. It's the essence of my life, that relationship with God through Christ. And it permeates and penetrates everything that I am and attempt to be, and how I go about thinking, speaking, and acting is all derived from that relationship. And trying to live out the living word of God, and how I conduct myself in all the different areas that he's given me to live in: a husband, a father, a grandfather, an African-American man in the United States, a member of a community. Everything that I am is derived and driven by that relationship. So faith is the essence. I've got other titles and responsibilities, but my identity is anchored to who God says I am through Christ.
So Clark, it's a beautiful story. You mentioned that basketball was on the throne.
Yeah, at one point.
So let me ask you this. Do you think it was a coincidence that it took you, it sounds like you found God when you started dealing with your injuries, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It's interesting, Sean. As I've grown in my faith over the last 30 plus years, I've done a lot of studying of the Bible. I've spent time with countless pastors and other men that have mentored me in my faith. And I enjoy listening to Dr. Charles Stanley. He's a terrific teacher of the Bible. And he talks about there are typically 10 things that are universal that oftentimes will lead one to at least explore who God is and what the scriptures say. And one of those things, actually, a couple of them are loss and disappointment.
Yes.
Dried up finances is another. Unanswered prayer is another. Great hardship. There are 10 of these things. And for me, it was the loss of a career and the disappointment that came with that. But there was also gratitude. I had realized a dream, Sean, even though I didn't know who God was. I acknowledged that there was a God just based on creation and how I was raised in a two-parent home in Cleveland. Although we didn't go to church a lot, there was a God consciousness. There was a reverence for a spiritual being, a higher power. I've discovered that to be God, the God of the scriptures, over the last 30 plus years. But there was a gratitude in my life for what I was able to achieve. I was drafted at 21 years old as the eighth pick in the first round of the NBA draft back in '82. That had been a dream. That was a dream realized. I had unbelievable support from extended family and people in my community, teachers and coaches, really good teammates. I was grateful for the opportunity that I was able to have through basketball. Got my education paid for through basketball. Got to see and do a lot of unbelievable, amazing things. Afforded me a lifestyle that's allowed me to not only live comfortably, but to help other people. And so I owed a lot to basketball, and there was gratitude, but there also was that sense of loss and disappointment, which drove me to a place of recognizing my need for Christ in my life.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of when you say loss, when Saul was on the road to Damascus.
That's a different kind of loss.
Right. He lost his, God took away his sight. And I'm not going to sit here and say that God took basketball away from you. But let me ask you this. When basketball was taken away from you and God entered into your life, were you married at that point?
I was married. I got married in 1983, drafted in '82. Rosie and I got married in 1983, and we actually came to our place in faith individually, but at about the same time. She had grown up in a home where she had been exposed. Her mom and dad were believers and followers of Christ. So she knew a little bit more of the way than I did. And yet we both came to a place where we acknowledged our own need and personal need for Christ and confessed our sin with our mouth, believed in our heart that God raised Christ from the dead, and gave our hearts and lives to him back in that time period of November of '86. And since then, we've sought to walk according to the light and the water that the scriptures provide to our souls and to our lives.
I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's in the chat listening to our community quarantine interview with Clark Kellogg. Clark, you mentioned being a lottery pick in the draft in the early 80s.
They weren't calling it the lottery back then.
But you were a lottery pick, baby. You were a lottery pick. And you played 5 years for the Indiana Pacers, and you put in work. You basically averaged a double-double in your 5 years of being in the league. You let the Lord into your life. You let the Lord take control of your life, and he has blessed you with who you refer to this day as your beautiful bride.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Tell us about the family that you've been blessed with. You mentioned your parents and growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. I know a little bit about your father through your support of our work through Game Changer. You said that your father was a police officer. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in the Kellogg household. You said you weren't big churchgoers, but there was a God presence in your family. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, your parents, and then as you moved on in life and became a husband and a father and a provider for your family.
Well, I'm extremely grateful for the upbringing I had. My dad and mom both are deceased. We lost my dad in 2016. My mom a lot earlier, back in 1994, complications from a surgery that went south, and she died very unexpectedly at the age of 53. My dad had some complications from multiple myeloma and a surgery issue as well back in the summer of 2016. But I've got really fond memories of my upbringing. I'm the oldest of five. I've got a younger brother and three younger sisters. Had all four of my grandparents, Sean, until I was 33 years old, and they were all in Cleveland.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really something to have all four of my grandparents around until I became a husband and a father. And so extremely grateful. A lot of aunts and uncles in the area. Family gatherings were big. A lot of times, because my mom and dad had 5 kids, it was easier for their extended families to come to our house. So a lot of good memories around the holidays with family being there. When I started to play basketball, particularly at the high school level, a lot of family members would be at the game supporting me, cousins, aunts, uncles. So I'm grateful. Lower middle income class. I like to say that means we had everything we needed and a few of the things that we wanted. As my dad worked my dad worked as a policeman in uniform and then became a detective. He would moonlight at local department stores and Cleveland Browns games. He and his brother, my uncle, were both Cleveland police officers. And so got to see them operate as men in blue. My mom was a domestic engineer, AKA stay-at-home mom, until I was, probably 8th grade, 9th grade. She started doing some work as an administrative assistant at a local hospital. So we had a stable, loving home. Wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of love, a lot of consistency, a lot of stability. And my dad was a really good 3-sport athlete during his high school days. Played some college ball, ended up playing some semi-pro football, but really was a good all-around athlete. And I heard about him and his exploits through the people in Cleveland as I started to make a name for myself on the hardwood. But man, I am extremely fortunate to have been raised. My dad was a people person, never met a stranger. My mom was really quite gracious and really kind of the rock, as my dad worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to provide for us, and she was there stabilizing. Good union, and it gave me a really good foundation of love and support as I moved forward in my own journey.
Where'd you get your discipline from, Clark? Because when I watch you on television, you're very deliberate in your words. You are obviously extremely well prepared. Was that something that you learned from your mother, your father, or both?
I think it was a combination of a lot of people, but I'll give my mom a lot of credit. As I continued to develop and grow as a player, obviously when you're excelling in your sport, particularly if it's basketball and football, in this country, you get a chance to interact with the media, and whether it's news reporters, writers, or on television. And my mom was adamant about me being able to communicate well, to speak thoughtfully. She enjoyed the fact that I excelled in playing, but she was most proud of whenever I was interviewed that I seemed to be thoughtful and educated, and that made her smile more than anything. And when I told her I wanted to be an NBA player someday, she said, "That's fine, but boy, if you do become this star you think you're going to be, then you better not ever embarrass me on TV. You better be able to speak clearly and put a thought together, and not a bunch of ums and ands or duh. No, you better be able to speak well." And that was reinforced not only by her, but by some of her siblings as well. So I took it to heart. And I've always loved words, Sean. I've always enjoyed reading. I can't remember not enjoying reading and English and math and communicating. So I think it's something that God put in me. I've sought to refine it, and I got some good constructive reinforcement and challenge from my mom to make sure I represented her and myself well when I was in front of a microphone.
So your mother seems to be the person that really gave you some guidance on how to conduct yourself. Yeah. With you being the son of a police officer, how did that affect how Clark would go outside, away from family, play with friends, get into things that young boys get into when they're outside playing? What was that like, being the son of a police officer?
Well, I tell you what, my dad was 6'4" and about 230, and up until I was 15, I couldn't handle him on the court. He was still in good enough shape to wear me out. And my mom was the disciplinarian in the house, but my dad would step in to support her when needed. So you always wanted, she would hold it down. Hot wheel tracks above the doorways, everywhere where she could get to him quick and give you a quick rap when you stepped out of bounds. And if she had to call my dad in, then you knew it was going to be something tough, you know. And it was rare that I stepped out of line, but when I did, and a lot of times for me, Sean, it wasn't necessarily, corporal punishment. It wasn't a paddle or the hot wheel. It was early on, but as I got to middle school and then high school, the greatest punishment for me, when I stepped out of line, the occasions that I did, was to take basketball away from me. To take the privilege of being able to go to the Y or go to the playground or connect with anybody playing hoops. If you wanted to straighten me up when I was acting a class clown or not doing what I was supposed to be doing, sloughing off on my chores, the best way to get my attention was to take that pumpkin away from me, and I'd straighten up in a heartbeat. And that's usually the times that I did get out of line. That's usually what got me back on the right track.
Well, God rest the souls of both your parents. Obviously, they've raised a beautiful, beautiful older son. I know that you said you got married.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your wife and how she played a role in helping you become a father. How did you meet your beautiful bride, Rosie?
I was hanging out with a bunch of the basketball players. Ohio State. I was a freshman at Ohio State. She was a senior in high school here in Columbus, and she was with some girlfriends at a concert. It was an R&B concert at the local fairgrounds here in Columbus, and one of my teammates, Herb Williams, who played a long time in the NBA, is a
great guy. Herb is a great guy.
Yeah, he's as good as they come, man.
Yeah.
Super, super good dude, and was a teammate of mine both in college and with the Pacers. But he was from Columbus as well, so he kind of knew the ladies in the area. And I asked him about Rosie, and he said he didn't think she was attached. And so I made a move and tried to get her number and did, but then I didn't call for like 3 months. And ultimately I got lucky because I got a chance to meet her again at another event, a basketball game this time. And that time I didn't drop the ball. And I didn't drop the ball that time. I got a mulligan and I took full advantage. We started to get together and shopping sprees and just hanging out. And she's an athlete. She was a really good athlete in high school. Didn't go on to college, but we started dating pretty seriously halfway through my freshman year at Ohio State. That would have been the winter of '79 into the winter of '80, and then it was her and I. The 3 years I was in school, man, we hit it off right away. Had a lot in common in terms of enjoying sports. She was pretty reserved. I'm kind of an outgoing extrovert. So we're a little bit opposite in that regard, but physical attraction, kindred spirit attraction, love of sports, like games, enjoyed move, a lot of common ground. And the courtship started, and it led to what will be we'll be 37 years married coming up in July, man. So
Wow.
I thank God for that,
Congratulations.
because my initial thought was to be a big time athlete, um, big man on campus, uh, not be tied down to anybody. And I'm so thankful that all of that went out of the window real quick, all of that crazy thinking. So I ended up connecting with Rosie, and she's just got a great spirit about her, man. She's really genuine and sweet and smart, and has been just a tremendous blessing to me over the years, man. And our relationship just continues to grow, which is the way it's designed to be, two becoming one according to the scriptures.
Okay.
And so we're on that journey of really being uh, equally yoked and united in our hearts and our thinking, and how we go about living the life God gives us.
So did you always want to start a family of your own, Clark? Was that something that you had in your mind from an
It
early
wasn't
age?
a burning desire initially. I was thinking more basketball, bachelor, a certain lifestyle.
Oh,
But
yeah,
then yeah, you know what I mean? And then
I do.
when her and I met and got serious, then this is the lady I wanted to be with for the rest of my life, and wanted to be, we wanted to have a family, and I wanted to have that privilege and blessing and responsibility. And so grateful that we've been able to realize that kind of dream. But it wasn't something that was driving me early, Sean. When we started to date and became serious, and it looked like we were headed towards marriage, then I started thinking about, man, I do want to be a dad and have the joy and responsibility, blessing and challenge of having children, and doing it with the woman that I love. So yeah, it became more. It was an ember that turned into a fire as I got a little older.
To everyone watching, you are tuned into CommYOUnity Quarantine. I'm here with Clark Kellogg. Clark, tell us about your kids. I know that you have a lot of pride in your children. You speak about being a father on CBS telecast. Tell us a little bit about your children.
Well, we've got three. Our three children are all adults now. Our daughter Talisa is married and has a little 3-year-old daughter. She played volleyball at Georgia Tech. Really a sweethearted young lady, and it's amazing to think that she's 33 already. Man, it's mind-boggling how fast the time goes. But she's here in Columbus, working for the local Chipotle office here as an administrative assistant, but doing really well. Really a bright, bubbly spirit and a joy to all of us. Then we got two boys. Alex, our oldest, is married. He has two children. He's got a little girl that's 3, and just 2 weeks ago, he and Esther brought a new boy into the world.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, yeah. So
Congratulations!
we've got 3 grandchildren now, 2 little girls, and then Clark Hayden just arrived 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and Alex is here studying to be an anesthesiologist assistant. He's about to start medical school here in about a month. End of May, they're going to have to do it virtually up in Cleveland, from Cleveland, but he's here in town. And then Nick, our youngest, had a really good basketball career at Ohio University. Continues to play overseas. Just recently finished the season, and a shortened season in Finland. Got back home the middle of March. He's single and here in town, and doing well. Everybody's healthy, and really proud of all 3 of our children. They're different personalities. They're extremely close to each other. I give Rosie an awful lot of credit for that. She fostered a really comfortable, secure, loving, open environment, and I tried to contribute where I could. And but no, our kids are really close, and we're really close to them. We still see them as much as we can during the quarantine. It's FaceTime, but when things are normal, they're typically here a couple of times a month to visit and stop by. So we've got really blessed regards to our family and how close they are, how close we are to them.
Well, that's beautiful. Jules Sully called you the GOAT, Clark. You got a lot of fans here. You got a lot of fans in the room.
Well, I'll take it as a compliment, man. There's a lot of guys that would fall under that category, but I appreciate the love, Sully.
So Clark, you've done your part to contribute to the community by building your own family. What I want to know from you is, what is it about the state of Ohio? You're from Cleveland. You settled in Columbus. Columbus has become your home. As you know, you and I met while I was coaching at Ohio State and spent 3 seasons in Columbus. And I was surprised when I got to Columbus. I was surprised at how comfortable I was made to feel. And I don't feel like it had anything to do with people treating me differently because I was a coach at Ohio State. I was surprised at how robust the African-American community is in Columbus. What is it about the state of Ohio and Columbus in particular that you have such a love for? You could have lived anywhere else that you wanted to live, and you decided to stay in Columbus, stay deeply and closely connected to Ohio State. Tell me about your love for Columbus and Buckeye Nation.
Well, it's amazing. There are a number of facets to it, Sean, quite honestly. Clearly, my wife is from here in Columbus, and this was a comfortable place for her and I both to reside, particularly when the children were younger. She has 11 brothers and sisters. One is deceased, but she's the 11th of 12.
Wow.
And everybody is here, and her mom and dad died in 14 and 15, respectively, but her entire family was here, and that made sense for us. My mom and dad at the time, when we lived in Indy, all 3 of our children were born in Indy. And then we came back here in '93 when our daughter was starting first grade in order to be around our extended family, closer to Cleveland, but also to be here to allow Rosie to have the kind of support she would need, because my work and our marriage has all been traveling, whether I was playing basketball and then clearly as a broadcaster for the last 3 decades, I've been on the road an awful lot during the basketball season. So having this support, and she's really close to all of her sisters. They've got a wonderful relationship. And so being here made sense from that standpoint, from a family standpoint, to have our kids be able to see and be around their grandparents and aunts and uncles, particularly on Rosie's side, and be a little closer to my family, which resided in Cleveland at the time. So that was a big motivating factor for residing here. And then obviously being a former Ohio State athlete, being born and bred in Cleveland, being a Midwest guy. I mean, my professional career was in Indianapolis.
Right.
So those are very similar type cities in that they're Midwestern cities. There's, and I know it's a little cliche, but there are Midwestern values. People have a sense of community and a sense of caring that may be a little different than some other places. And that's comfortable for me. I mean, I take pride in being from Northeastern Ohio, being a Buckeye. And the Buckeye Nation, the network of Ohio State, obviously, it's huge on the athletic front, particularly in football, which has been one of the great programs in the history of college sports, the football program at Ohio State. And then basketball has certainly held its own over the years and decades. But there's an affinity and an affection and a spirit that's really hard to explain. You spent some time here, so you could sense and feel some of that from the Ohio State standpoint. And the tentacles of Ohio State are not just city and state and nationwide, they're worldwide.
Yes, they are.
And they really here are magnified and amplified. And I feel that, and I appreciate that. And I'm grateful to be a part of the Buckeye Nation family, a part of the Ohio State University family, and that's lifelong. The impact that place has had on me, not just in terms of my education, but the people, the relationships have really anchored and fortified me and helped me grow and be involved and engaged in the lives of other people in a meaningful way. So this was an easy decision for us to be here. And there's much, I mean, people that don't get to Columbus much are surprised when they visit, because it is a dynamic place. There's a vibrant community. Overall, there's a really healthy African-American community. There's a collaborative spirit throughout the city. Not perfect, but there's a really good vibe and a lot of good things going on in business, in community, in education. And it's a comfortable place to make home. And I consider it home. I don't envision going anywhere else unless the Lord dictates that we make a change. But we seem to be pretty well anchored here now.
I don't blame you. I really enjoyed my 3 years there. Wasn't necessarily ready to leave, but I know that one thing about you that really stands out is your dedication to serving in the community. Since I've known you, whenever I've called upon you to get involved, it has always had something to do with bettering the community. When I was at Ohio State and I wrote that long piece on racial equity in college sports, you supported me privately and publicly. When we created the Game Changer program, you stepped up on a personal level, came out of your own pocket and supported our efforts to bring Game Changer to Columbus. What is it about you, Clark, that you make it your daily mission to improve the community in which you live and communities in which you don't live? Tell us a little bit about your passion for service, helping young people, and bettering the world that you live in.
Well, I think it's primarily driven, Sean, from my biblical worldview that our lives are a stewardship. And God entrusts to us certain gifts and opportunities and responsibilities. And in order to honor and glorify Him, we have to try to make the most and best of what He's entrusted to us. Clearly, through basketball, I've gained visibility. I've gained a platform in addition to a livelihood that's allowed me to be able to try to help other people. And my mom and dad, even though there are tons of ways you can help people, and it's all about wanting to and then getting involved and trying to be conscious of lifting other folks up. And really, the world is not about you or me. It's not about us. It's about how we can help other people. That really is the greatest fulfillment that we can have, is to elevate and help and support others in good works and in enhancing the community. So my dad was a policeman. He coached my first organized basketball team that I ever played on, the Police Athletic League. I don't know how many PAL leagues exist anymore, Police Athletic League, but
they're still there.
There's still some of them around. I know, because there's a couple actually locally here, the Columbus, the policemen. I don't know if they call it the Police Athletic League, but police officers, in an effort to connect to the community, will offer clinics and coaching opportunities, boot camps, to encourage young people to get better in their sport, but also to see them, police officers, as men and women in their communities. And that's part of what I saw early on with my dad, coaching a Police Athletic League football team and basketball team as a way to serve and connect to the community. And I saw it in countless other folks in my family being involved in helping other people. And so it was part of how I was raised. And then obviously, as a Christ follower, a couple of the major tenets of Christianity are to, actually the two greatest commandments are to love God and to love other people. And you love other people by being able to support them and help them in need, but also encourage and uplift them in their countless avenues by which we have a chance to do that. And I've always appreciated your heart and your work and the effort you've brought to trying to uplift and trying to connect people and trying to bring about change for justice and equality. And so anytime I can be part of helping folks that are doing that, then I want to do it. I can't do everything, but I think all of us can do something.
You're tuned in to CommYOUnity Quarantine Live. My guest is Clark Kellogg. Clark, I want to read a quote. It's a tweet by Dr. Boyce Watkins. And I'm reading it because you retweeted it on Twitter. Every Black man should commit himself to being a person that his family can depend on. You are the provider, the protector, and one of the leaders of your space. If you lead, then others will follow. Come on, brother. You can do it. Why that particular tweet? What about those words compelled you and inspired you to co-sign that quote and retweet it? They're heavy words.
Well, yeah, it resonated hard with me on multiple levels, on every level, quite honestly. And clearly that extrapolates beyond African American men. That's men in general.
Yes,
but
sir.
Dr. Boyce Watkins was focused and targeted on African American men, which I am one. And I also happen to be a father. And I understand the importance of the role of a dad. And I don't take that lightly. I have a heavenly father in God through Christ. I'm an earthly father. I had a solid, consistent, good father. And I understand the importance that plays in the development of young people. And so that resonated on so many levels because, one, it's a responsibility. It's a blessing, but it's also a responsibility. And you have to own up to that. You have to seize that. You have to take hold of that. It's not something that just happens. You have to be intentional about taking hold of your responsibility to provide, to be counted on, to be trustworthy, to be consistent. I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about an attitude and an effort to do your best for those that have been entrusted to your care. And that means you take care of yourself so that you can be prepared and equipped to take care of your family, to provide for them, not just financially and materially, but to provide support, being at their games, being at their events, being present, being engaged, hearing their heartbeat, engaging with them, teaching them what you know, letting them know your story, letting them know where you failed, where you've messed up, where you wish you could have a redo, being honest and authentic consistently so they can see that and they can feel that and they can feel you. They can feel your love through your presence, through your provision, through your example. That to me is the greatest call that we have as men when we have families. There's nothing greater outside of honoring God, but you can't honor God if you don't take care of what he gives you. And so it's all tied together. And I could go on and on, but that resonated powerfully. And it's a way for me to continue to self-talk. That's part of why I tweeted it. But I also know that social media is a tremendous platform and words have power. Words have importance and impact and influence. And I like to tweet words that are encouraging, challenging, inspiring, uplifting, and hopefully they move people to a higher level of usefulness, productivity, and fulfillment in their own lives, because we all have to run our own races, but we don't run them alone.
Shout out to Irving. Shout out to Bridget. Shout out to my mom who's tuned in.
Oh, cool.
Clark, I couldn't agree with you more, especially when you talk about being authentic and sharing with other people the mistakes that you've made. You spend a lot of time around young people, as do I, and I make it a point to share my testimony with them and let them know the mistakes that I've made, the things that the pain I've caused other people, to let them know that you don't have to be perfect in life. You can make mistakes in life, but you need to learn from your mistakes and try and become a better person as a result of those mistakes. Yeah. Far too often, adults make the mistake of coming off as, I'm older than you, I know more than you, and kids will look at you thinking that, oh, you got to where you got to and you didn't make any mistakes. I try and tell adults, Clark, how important it is to share with young people that you have fallen, that you have made mistakes, so that they don't have this unrealistic expectation that they're carrying with them throughout life.
That's good, man. So good. I can't preach it or teach it any better than you just said it. That's real talk, and it's important. I mean, it's a humility thing, too. It's not about what you've done. It's about the journey that's gotten you to this point and recognizing you haven't done it on your own when you've achieved. Other people have been a big part of that, and that it's not really what drives you. It's what you do with what you've been given, and humility is part of that. Humility and sharing the not so glamorous side of where you've been and how you've been for the purpose of growth and improvement, because I like to say, and I don't know where I heard this, but we need rain and sunshine to grow.
Hey, how about that?
You know, we got to have them both, and typically we grow most when we get rained on a little bit, in whatever form that rain comes. whether it's COVID-19 or it's
Right.
something we're going through. Otherwise, typically we grow when we're forced to reset and adjust and rethink. And sometimes that means we have to go through some pain and difficulty to get to that point.
We're here with Clark Kellogg on CommYOUnity Quarantine. I'm going to have some people take the opportunity. If anybody who's watching, if you have any questions for Clark, go ahead on and submit them. Clark, we know how basketball has played a pivotal role in your life. You talk about the platform it's allowed you to have. But you're in broadcasting now. When you were playing, did you have broadcasting as a backup plan? Was that in your mind, or did you quickly shift gears once the injuries came and decided and realized that this is something that you wanted to give a shot? And not only did you give it a shot, as I said, as if you've been watching basketball long enough, college basketball, you've replaced a legend.
Yeah.
Billy Packer, at one point in time, was the face, in my opinion,
Yeah.
the face of college basketball, particularly the tournament. You are that man now. Was that part of your plan while you were playing? And if it wasn't, how did you transition from basketball to broadcasting, and not just broadcasting locally, nationally?
Well, it wasn't in my plan. I can certainly tell you that. My plan was to play 10, 12 years successfully, hopefully compete for a championship or two, and while playing, prepare for some type of entrepreneurial pursuit, whether it was insurance or some other type of business venture. One of my dear friends and mentors, Ira Novak, helped me understand and learn the insurance business when I was a high school senior through my my 3 years in college. I worked with him during the summer, so I had a real business interest and a bit of a business acumen. But when basketball playing ended, it really was what I knew best at the time, Sean. Basketball was what I had spent the bulk of my life doing and preparing for. So I had a really healthy knowledge of the game at every level. High
Right.
school, college, and the pros. And so when I had to retire at 26 years old, had really engaged myself and involved myself in the community, had been a good teammate and a good representative of the Pacers franchise. So I got an opportunity to stay involved in some capacity, not knowing what it would be. Just talking with Donnie Walsh at the time, who was the Pacers president and general manager. He and I talked, and he wanted me to be involved with the organization in some capacity. And it just so happened that radio broadcasting was a nice slot for me to slide into because they were hiring the voice of the Miami Heat now, Mike English, who's been a long-time radio voice for the Heat, but he started in the NBA with the Pacers the year that I had retired, August of 87, that season, 87, 88. And our organization felt like it would be good for me to perhaps partner with Mike. He was not as familiar with the NBA as I was, having played the last 5 years, knowing the league and knowing the game. So we started a partnership there, and it fit me. I love words. I know the game. I'm a diligent worker and student of whatever I try to do. And so it fit well. And I said, I think I can do this at a high level. And I just approached it like I played. How do I get better? What kind of work is it going to require? And am I willing to stay the course for the long haul? And radio led to television. Television led to an opportunity to do Cleveland State University TV locally in my hometown of Cleveland. And that led to opportunities at ESPN, where I spent 8 years. And for the last 23 years, I've been at CBS. So it was a gradual progression. I didn't just show up in a position to replace Billy Packer when he stepped aside.
Absolutely not.
Right. No, I didn't just show up, but I did enjoy it. I thought I could be good at it, and I was willing to work at trying to be good at it. And lo and behold, I've been at it for a long time and have been really closely associated with the tournament for the last 20 plus years. And for a lot of the younger folks out there, other than NBA 2K, which I do some commentary on, that's how they know me, associated with the tournament and commentating NBA 2K.
That's fact. You know, Clark, it's amazing that you just said that. We just spoke with the Los Angeles Lakers amidst the COVID-19 crisis. And you know the format of Game Changer is to bring law enforcement and community together 3 hours before the start of a collegiate professional game. And then we go see the game. We are making plans to do Game Changer virtually. And then when we're done, tune in to watch an NBA 2K game.
Wow, isn't that something? Wow, that is so cool. They just had the NBA 2K tournament or challenge, I guess, with some of the NBA players. My phone was blowing up because people that were watching,
they want you to commentate.
They heard me commentating a little bit, so my phone blew up a few times when that was going on, which has been an unbelievable ride to be part of that with Kevin Harlan and Greg Anthony and countless other guys now from Turner and CBS that have been part of that. But it's been a great ride, man. I've really enjoyed it. I don't play the game, but
neither do I.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun having my voice on it.
But it's also, you know, I just watched the game for the first time yesterday, and I can honestly say that I was entertained watching these guys play this video game and have it commentated because it felt like I was watching the game. It felt like I was watching the real game.
I appreciate you saying that because that's our desire, that if you're watching a game that you feel like, and 2K Sports has done a phenomenal job with the technology and refreshing the game, and then our voices add, and we want it to feel as though it's a real game, and that's what people tend to tell me when I ask them for their critique. And obviously the game's been extremely popular for its playability, but I would hope that the commentating adds a little bit of enjoyment to the gamers as well.
It absolutely does, Clark. Our time is waning. I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the nonprofit organizations that you're involved with, the ones that are most near and dear to your heart, the programs that you spend the most time with, providing your treasure, your time, and your talent toward them. And if there are some websites that you could share with us so we can learn more about those organizations that you spend the most time with, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've got obviously my alma mater, Ohio State University. I just ended my term as a trustee back in May of 19. So I still stay very connected to the Ohio State University athletic program and the university at large. Involved with sports ministries, Christian sports ministries, Athletes in Action, AIA.com. And the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, FCA.com. The One Heart Project, an organization that is seeking to give young folks that have been impacted by the juvenile justice system a second chance as they come out of incarceration or detention, to give them a second chance through some life skills and mentoring and then job placement. So very involved with the One Heart Project. But those are probably the three. And then we get involved, obviously, with educational initiatives here in the Central Ohio area and try to support philanthropically social agencies, United Way here in Central Ohio. I mentioned FCA and Athletes in Action. Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Central Ohio. We've been supporters of their work for a long time. So my heartbeat and our heartbeat is to try to elevate young people, to support them in their efforts, and then to provide need for those in need or those that are perhaps left behind or not experiencing the kind of equality in their lives that we desire for everybody. So that's kind of where our heartbeat is. But those are a few of the organizations that I've spent some considerable time with and supporting and helping.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. So I want to spend the last little bit of our time talking about an element of college basketball that really, it seems like folks can't come to an understanding and make a decision and move forward. I want to get your thoughts on the compensation of college athletes and how you feel about that, and if you have any thoughts that you might want to share as it relates to that.
Boy, that's a complicated one. I think college should be college. I think paying Paying the student athletes is professionalizing them. I am in favor of continuing to enhance what cost of attendance looks like for college athletes on scholarship, particularly in the revenue generating sports. But
Right.
across the board, I think there should be some allowance for some type of stipend that would keep college student athletes on scholarship from having to go in their pocket for anything. Incidental expenses, maybe an entertainment budget, but there
Right.
should be money made available so that the cost of attendance when you're on scholarship doesn't cost you anything. And there should be a little fluff in there for the incidental expenses that take place when you're on a college campus. So I feel strongly about that. I think part of what we've gotten away from is the value of the educational component. And that has been totally dismissed and minimized, I think, to the detriment of what sports at the college level should be. I understand there's a business component, and I understand there's room for student athletes to have better care and better compensation, or better care through compensation of some form. It doesn't necessarily have to be a gapper or handing them some money. It could be through other services and other benefits. But the educational component is sometimes just poo-pooed as if there's no value in that.
Right.
When everybody wants to talk about the 60 to 80 guys that might be NBA players, or the 200 or 300 that might be NFL players, and there's 4,000 playing Division I basketball and hundreds of thousands playing other sports. So
Right.
to me, the educational piece has to get back to where it has meaningful value. Most people's lives will be more changed by education than being a pro athlete.
Agreed.
That's guaranteed.
Agreed.
Guaranteed and documented and fact. So to get overly hung up on whether or not student athletes are being paid misses the point to me. Make better, create better benefits, divide some of that revenue pie that the NCAA and these conferences and institutions get through television revenue, but also let's recalibrate the value of the education, and let's make sure that these student athletes are actually getting a meaningful education.
Right.
Let's make sure they're getting a meaningful education. That's not to dismiss your question about compensation, but compensation isn't the answer. Improved benefits, some level of stipend, yes. But total compensation, go to the pros. You don't have to go to college if you're not interested in being a college athlete. You don't have to go.
You're right.
I know that's hard and cruel. You don't have to. If you desire to be a pro and you want to be a pro, our system needs to be redone. There's no question about it. It needs to be redone. It needs to be torn down and reshaped so that there are more pathways to realizing dreams other than thinking you just have to go to college as the only way to have a chance to be a pro. Particularly, I'm talking basketball and football. And so I'm not for paying them. It's a long way around. I'm not for paying student athletes, but I am for improving the benefits and the cost of attendance components so that student athletes don't have to go in their pocket when they're on scholarship.
Well, I know you feel passionately about it because we've been talking for almost an hour and it got you up off the couch a little bit. You know, and you know,
yeah, I just don't have enough time to give it. You know, that's a multi-pronged, multi-layered deal. But my main position is I'm not in favor of paying the college athletes because that's what the pros do. I like a differentiation, and part of the differentiation is the value of the education. But when lumped together, it gets muddied and cloudy, and that's where we have the issue, because it is a bit hypocritical to look at the business component and then think about the salaries of coaches, the salaries of administrators, and then the scholarship that student athletes get doesn't seem to equate to these astronomical, ridiculous salaries and income levels of coaches. That's where the real discrepancy started, and that's why you have this real swaying of public opinion around amateurism and the NCAA model.
So, Clark, before we sign off, I'm going to add my 2 cents in because we've spent a considerable amount of time talking about community. I feel like it's, without question, people tune in to see the young people perform. Yeah. Nobody's turning on the television to watch a referee or watch watch an athletic director. They're tuning in to see the kids play. Yeah. Perhaps some of the billions of dollars that their talent is bringing into college athletics can go back into the community to support some of these organizations that are nurturing and helping to assist these young men and women get through life and become responsible adults, parents, fathers, and mothers. I don't know if that's on the table, but perhaps that's something that we can talk about. There's going to have to be a happy medium that's struck. I agree with you about the amateurism of college athletics, but there's too much money being generated for some of these young men and women and the communities that they come from. There should be some benefit there. That's just my personal opinion.
No, I love the idea. It's an idea that deserves further discussion and attention, because you've got to be creative and innovative, because the model is not 21st century worthy. It needs to be altered and changed. And what that looks like, those kinds of ideas should be part of the discussion in terms of benefit and dispersing this pie of revenue that's generated primarily through the athletic gifts of football and basketball players. We know that. So let's come up with a way to make it a little more fair. And part of it, to me, would be putting a top on some of these salaries that coaches get. I mean, that's when things really started to get out of control. But again, supply and demand, the market forces, I understand that. But there should be a way for the student athletes to get more of a piece of this market-driven revenue. On one hand, the market drives the salaries of the coaches and the athletic administrators, but there's it's tamped down on the student athletes. So how do you, and again, the system is such that it makes it hard, but I don't think it's impossible to come up with a way to make it more equitable and more fair in the eyes of everybody. Because right now there's a big discrepancy, and it's not going to. I don't think it's going to last. Something pretty significant's going to change in the coming years as far as what this system looks like going forward.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way. Clark, I want to thank you again for joining us on Community Quarantine. My brother, you know I love you. If there's anything I could ever do for you in the future moving forward, let me know. Thank you for always answering my call.
I don't have any choice in that, man. Love is mutual. That's a two-way street, bro. Love and appreciate you, and I'm glad we could connect in this manner during these difficult, uncertain yet but opportunity-filled times too.
Thank you, Clark. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you, Sean. Take care, bro.
God bless.
Yeah. Bye. God bless you.